On this episode of AV Week, where does USB belong in the AV industry? Sustainability in the audiovisual space, and petitioning our governments to protect the AV industry. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 581, recorded Friday, October 7th, 2022. Vote for Joe.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Extron, industry-leading technology backed by world-class support.
And by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss news and information we have gathered this week. First and foremost, Charmaine Torruella from QSC. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. A young man I have not seen in real life for a minute, but his name is Joe Cornwall, and he is from La Grande. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And last but not least, a young man that I have known but never gotten to wrangle him onto AV Week. His name is Andrew Evans, and he is from fantastic Extron. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Tim.
Absolutely. Just housekeeping here real quick, because I am still compelled to do this. Both Extron and La Grande are sponsors of AVNation, and we thank them. Not necessarily, their company's opinions. Some of them will be. And QSC is just cool because we like Charmaine and, Joe Pham and all those folks. So, all right. First story comes to us from commercial integrator. Alyssa Borelli writes about creating a sustainable future. Quote unquote, one of the biggest sustainability stories our industry has ever seen is the emergence of sustainability in AV. SAVE is the acronym there, to give voice to the need to prioritize sustainability-minded practices. Charmaine, I'm going to start with you on this. And the thing here is there are several ways that manufacturers, and all three of you are manufacturers, there are several ways manufacturers can help the industry reach this goal. Packaging and how you produce all these things. As manufacturers, or even as an AV professional yourself, what are ways that we can encourage everybody down the chain to reach and strive for a sustainable AV?
Well, the first thing, going down the chain from manufacturers, most of the manufacturers now, including QSC, we're now starting to virtualize certain products, right? So, pretty much minimizing that footprint even further and not having all that equipment, hardware, and those emissions. So making everything go in the cloud, that's a big start. What a lot of the people down the chain could start doing, and I'm going to start with the integrators first, because I used to be one, is basically recognizing that's where the client needs to be. A lot of clients have sustainability initiatives, and unfortunately, not everyone is tuned into that when it comes to incorporating AV. Presenting this and making that part of helping the sustainability initiatives goes a long way. If you're not talking about it, if you're not doing it, and you're having them do the same old, which is not providing the sustainability necessary and not helping towards their sustainability initiatives, it kind of hinders your business a bit. It hinders your business a great deal, to be honest. And nowadays, a lot of clients are looking for those providers that have those sustainability initiative stories, solutions, designs, equipment, products, that helps with those initiatives that they have invested money in. And that's what people have to understand as well. It's not just talk on their part. They've made real investments. So here on our end, going all the way down from manufacturer down, have to do the same.
All right, Mr. Cornwall, same kind of question here is how do you connect with those?
Yeah, I mean, seriously, this is a great topic because a lot of the folks that are joining us today and listening to this might not realize that La Grande has been one of the top 50 most sustainable corporations in the world globally for several years, and we've actually been in the top 100 since about 2016. So we take sustainability very, very seriously. And Charmaine, I think one of the things that you kind of alluded to there was this concept of we need to really address a circular economy. We cannot produce the kind of waste that we've been producing. And to just kind of maybe step ahead of ourselves a little bit, I think the recent ruling on USB Type-C in Europe, that we're going to be using the same kind of chargers for things, this is a step in that direction, as is the idea that we can get rid of extraneous packaging, that we can provide solutions for our customers and kit them so there's less packaging that needs to go into a landfill. If we can do this at a manufacturer's end, it can save everybody money, including the manufacturer. So I think the biggest thing, and Charmaine, you hit it right on the head, that is, we can't just talk the talk, we have to walk the walk. Yeah. And a company proves that every day by the things that they do.
All right, Andrew, same kind of question. I'll say the same thing really quickly. Is, again, 100 years ago, I was a technology manager, and I could watch every year products from all three of y'all, packaging going down, right, and this, that, and the other. So as a manufacturer, how do you get connected with those initiatives?
Yeah, no, for sure. We definitely are looking at ways to improve and streamline that packaging, being able to reduce the footprint of it to those integrators. So yeah, that's my background as well. I came from the integration side, and I can remember days of you show up at the shop and you're starting to rack up gear, and so all right, I uncrate a rack and I start slotting gear into it. The next thing you know, you've got half of your dumpster full of cardboard and foam and plastics and stuff. It's 20 years ago, and thankfully we've been able to move on from that, and the amount of waste generated by the packaging has been reduced substantially. And Extron, I think, has really done a great job over the years too with our policies on e-waste recycling, being able to work with our integrators to bring those old products back in to be handled responsibly, not just having them end up in a landfill somewhere. And doing things like power supply trade-ins, as well as other programs where we're really trying to work with our integrators and have that integration between the manufacturing side as well as those boots on the ground that are having to deal with this on a day in, day out basis, and being able to support them to reduce that and to improve their social responsibility side.
And just if I could jump in for a second, QSIS, right, QSC, one of the things, and Andrew talking about how Extron has performed, making that possible, our cores in itself, is making everything in one box instead of multiple different boxes, right? Minimizing that and putting all the functionality for most of the components and the operation of the room in a core. It's kind of how QSIS, mastered this, right? In order to make it less boxes and less equipment that you have to ship. So instead of a DSP box, control box, a box for this, it's all in the core. And that's very important. So I agree with Andrew. That's one of the things I think all of us as manufacturers, when we look at innovating our products, we look towards, minimizing the amount of components and products that you have to put in space, that doesn't lend to sustainability at all, and just minimizing that and putting it all in one box or one widget per se.
Let me ask a question here as we wrap up here, and this is for any of the three of you. Andrew mentioned the e-waste and that recycling. How do you connect? How do you get in front of, quite frankly, the end user, the customer here, to either make those projects or those processes known, or I guess working through the integrator and offering those services through them? Is that the system here? And as they're replacing gear, will they just take the old stuff out, whether it's a ginormous 16 by 16 matrix or it's a Barco 3-gun projector that's the size of a Yugo?
I think it's funny that you say a 16 by 16 is a ginormous matrix.
Okay, it's not.
I get a kick out of that because I just introduced a 840 by 840 a couple weeks ago. But no, seriously, I think it's probably the same for Joe and Charmaine in a lot of ways, that we're business to business organizations, and so from an end user perspective, a lot of that burden falls to our integrator partners. And so we have to make sure that our integration partners are up to speed on what we're doing from a sustainability perspective. I know from our side of things, we've got sections of our website dedicated to the topic, and we do have marketing pushes even on some of those efforts. And I would imagine the same holds true for the other organizations.
Yeah, that's true. And for our organization in particular, my role was specifically designed to engage with the end user. So that's what I do here at QSC. So we engage directly with the end users to work through and communicate those initiatives and those programs that we have for sustainability. And they do work through their integrator, but we get ahead of it, right? So for us at QSYS and QSC, we want to get ahead of it. And that's why I and my team, we engage with the end users to communicate that. So I think it's, and I think Joe I'm going to give him a soft toss, is going to chime in. It's everyone's responsibility, right? It's not just, one branch of our industry. So I'll turn that over to you, Joe, because I know that's what
No,
you're thinking.
we're all in this together. There's no question about it. And I think one of the challenges we have in AV is we think too small. When we start looking at sustainability, it's more than just the packaging. It's more than just what do I do with the old batteries or with the old matrix switch. We have to think in terms of how do we create products in the future that use less energy, that integrate more easily. A really good example, to just kind of boast on it a little bit, is one of the products that came out of Legrand's building control systems division. We have divisions that do all of these things. That is a power recovery switch for PoE powered industrial lighting. So now you literally can have a switch that you can mount anywhere with no wires, push it. The energy of pushing it is what energizes it. So this works on a number of different levels, allowing us to integrate more easily without having structured cabling behind it. So once again, this is part of that think bigger. We all talk about AV merging with IT, but we tend to have a problem talking about infrastructure merging. Right? Operation systems merging with intelligent systems, merging with media systems, and yet electrons flow through all of them. So it's an engineering problem. And Charmaine, what you touched on also with working with, and Andrew, with what you both mentioned about working with the end users, it's a communication challenge. It's all about how is the company communicating this, and I think that responsibility falls not only on educators, and I'm an educator for Legrand's AV University, but it also falls on the shoulders of marketing and sales to carry this message and to make sure that we're offering our services to help make sure that we're making a sustainable effort and impact.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Sort of in that vein, about a month or so ago, Germany passed a law where it was basically banning digital signage from 10 p.m. until 4 p.m. every single day. And if you were in the digital signage industry, it caused quite a stir. Now they have backed off on that. The restriction now goes from 10 p.m. to 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. every single day. In addition to that, if the digital signage is advertising for the business at that location, meaning that you have a piece of signage for your location and it's right there, you're exempt for the 10p to 6a, as well as sporting locations are exempt. One of the things I want to point out here is the fact that there was a kind of a groundswell in the industry and kind of beyond that pushed back on the German government and said, hey, you're kind of affecting a whole big bunch of people here. And that kind of got me thinking that this is something that we could take a page from our brothers and sisters in Germany in pushing back on our government. I'm not going to get into a political discussion here, but let's just say over the last 20 years or so, certain parts of the government have sold off certain parts of what we use. Wireless spectrum is one of those aspects. And I'm not going to go into, the fact that we've had 4 or 5 changes in the wireless spectrums and the frequencies that we can use. But Joe, when it comes to talking to the government about their impact on our industry, what can we do? Whether that is a end user, whether that is an integrator, or collectively as manufacturers.
The first word that comes to mind is vote, right? If we want to send a message to those who purport to govern us and to help us to be better, then we should be demanding that they show their leadership through example. So right there, I think that's part of it. I think the other part of the conversation has to be educational in that regard. So we have to let people know, for example, when you think about digital signage, if the only thing that comes to mind is a Las Vegas lit up at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday with nobody really on the strip, okay, you could turn some of those lights off, and I think the world will be okay with that. But if we're going to turn off digital signage, that helps me find where I have to be. That helps me to get real information that will, for example, just recently with Hurricane Ian, digital signage systems that could have told us the path of that. Things like that should never be turned off under those circumstances, because that's an important method of communication. So part of it is education, and part of it is just plain out demanding better from those who represent us.
Yep, I like where Joe was going with that, is because you've got kind of a consumer-oriented advertising aspect where you've got pay to run the ads on the signage, try to get interactivity, draw that eye in, versus a public service side of the signage. And in those natural disaster applications and other things like wayfinding, those things really do make a difference to people's day-to-day life, and really almost become not necessarily a crutch, but it's something that we become accustomed to. We're ingrained into having that kind of an access of information. If you're doing wayfinding as part of digital signage, you show up to a building at 3 in the afternoon, you can find where you need to go. But you show up at 10 o'clock at night and now you can't find your way. That seems kind of like a mismatch in goals. Yeah. So it was nice to see that as an industry in Germany, they were able to come together and maybe kind of pivot a little bit and have a little bit more logic prevail.
Yep. Charmaine, how do we take our needs and our desires for our industry to our elected officials?
The first thing, vote. I agree with what Joe says 100%. The problem is, vote for those individuals who understand it. That's the biggest problem.
Oh my gosh, yes.
In our governance, we don't have politicians that understand technology or anything about it in order to make a good, sound decision of where everything needs, how things need to be managed, especially if it comes to scaling back, when we use digital signage. In our environment, it's very much a capitalist environment, and for our politicians, a lot of them follow that, right? You need to vote for and go for the politicians or the people who A, understand technology, very few of them do, and B, understand what's at stake and vote for them, and they're hard to find, unfortunately. I would recommend that people who have this passion and desire, like someone, let's say Joe Cornwall, may want to think about running one day. I mean, hey, I'm throwing it out there.
I'm not saying no.
Listen, throwing it out there because I think that's what it's going to take. I think it's going to take the people in our society, in our neck of the woods in the U.S. that have the passion and the understanding to really, get involved in the public sector in order to make this possible.
And demand that those in the public sector actually provide something more than a bumper sticker as a statement of what they understand.
Exactly.
Right? Don't give me 3 syllables that are clever. Give me an actual well thought out position.
I vote for Joe.
All right,
that's one.
That's one. Next, our last story here comes to us from our friends over at The Verge. USB folks are asking you to stop using the term super speed branding. They want to refer to USB devices by the version number. So instead of referring it by a version number, they want to start referring it as the specs. So USB 5 gigabytes, 10 gigabytes, and so on and so forth. And this kind of led me, I'm fantastic that this story came out this week because Joe Cornwall has been talking about USB-C for 20 years, as long as I've known him. But Andrew, we'll start with you on this. We'll kind of let Joe anchor this. Where does USB belong in the commercial AV industry? And there's a reason I'm asking here, right? Because 10 years ago, it was a pain, right? It was seen as a 100% a residential issue, right? A resi or even, prosumer if you wanted to go that far. And this is before the ubiquitous nature of webcams and stuff like this. We were still putting in, high dollar video conferencing systems. and now USB has become an integral part of the commercial AV industry. So where does this whole, whether it's A, B, or C, where does it belong?
Low speed, high speed, super speed, connector types, all of that. I think that we've been drug into USB, and it's not going anywhere. I think it's only going to increase its uptake in applications. Just look at the kinds of cameras that are being integrated into spaces these days. 10 years ago, you were buying a PTZ head and picking out a Fujinon lens to go on the camera and using Visca control for it. And now, unless you are doing high-end broadcast or something else, you're probably looking at a USB camera and figuring out how to do a USB microphone to pair with it for your spaces. And so the barrier for entry has been really lowered by the adoption of USB as a transport protocol. And so I think it's here to stay. I think that as manufacturers, we have to understand the ins and outs of it, the limitations of it, and to have the right products to support it for the applications. The shift, the story that you mentioned, the shift away from that 3-syllable, easy for consumer to understand super speed moniker, I think is curious, especially in light of Wi-Fi getting away from all their versioning and going to Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 6, because they felt version numbers were too complicated for consumers. And here we have USB kind of taking the opposite approach of, oh, super speed doesn't give you enough detail. Let's refer to it by the version number and make sure that you include the data rate while you're at it.
Yeah.
I get where they're going because you've got everything from 5 gigs all the way up to 80 gigs, all on the same type of connector. And so, it's tough. It is. HDMI wrestled with the same thing. You couldn't promote products based off of HDMI versions. You had to call out which feature set was supported. It wasn't HDMI 1.4, 2.0, 2.1 anymore. Now it was HDMI deep color, HDMI audio return channel, that type of thing. And so I think USB is taking kind of that same approach.
All right. Charmaine, where does USB belong in the industry?
Everywhere that you could put it. I mean, and I'm saying that.
You just stole Joe's answer.
Sorry, Joe. I think me and Joe are so in tune. That's why I'm trying not to, answer. We have the same ideas and feelings about things, but everywhere you can put it. I mean, USB came about because honestly, like you said, people thought it was all residential. And what happens, and I've always said this before, residential influences commercial. That happened with, the Apple, Charmaine, can we put an Apple iPad in the room 10, 12 years ago? Let me see. Maybe we can. And then lo and behold, that's all we're doing nowadays because people now want to have the same ease of use and speed and not have to think and learn how to bring the same type of environment that they use at home into the office. They don't want to learn about it. And also now that we're dealing with hybrid work models, right? Some days I'm at work, some days I'm at home. Has to be similar, has to be the same. USB, there's a, synonymous can translate into both environments at this point. But for the purposes of the commercial integrators and, people that are, doing the integration, yes, you have to have the different does it really do this speed or this speed? Can I do 10 gigs on this one, or what version do I have to use? So I think that's where that's coming into play to help the business side out and, incorporating USB more. Joe, I don't want to say any more. I'm just going to turn it to you.
No, you're going absolutely down the right path. I mean, we are absolutely speaking the same language. And what I would kind of say is this. When we think about USB or any of these other things, whether it's AV over IP, HDMI, any of the other protocols that we use typically in AV, let's think about what it really is. It's the great convergence. So where is USB? It is how we get signals into fixed AV assets. It is not a structured cabling. It is not designed to run 65 feet behind walls in a room. That's a completely different application. But it is the perfect connector to go between a portable device and some kind of a docking station. And to the extent that AV integrators and AV design engineers are saying, well, that's not me. I take everything after the docking station. Well, who is helping us to put the stuff into the system and make it work to begin with? Yeah. We have to think of it holistically, and we have to begin to think of the integration not only of portable with fixed AV assets, but also the integration of consumer products with commercial products, because I think that's always been an artificial line. And I cannot let this slip without getting back to your first comment. This idea about the USB Implementers Forum putting on a cable that it's 5 gig, 10 gig, 20 gig. Congratulations, you're speaking to me. Now tell my mom what that means.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? I mean, we've just lost everybody by doing this, because by telling me that a cable is 80 gigs, as a consumer, 80 is twice as much as 40 and 4 times as much as 20, I'm going to buy that one because it's way better. Oh, wait a minute, you mean my phone still doesn't do video? No, because your phone was never designed to do video over the USB connector. You can't use your iPad to hook up to your webcam? No, because it wasn't designed to use an external webcam. It's not the connector's fault, it's not the USB system fault, but this move by the USB Implementers Forum is not at all like HDMI, and I'll tell you why. HDMI does one thing. It transports audio video content with some mixed in control unidirectionally. Nothing comes back. It all goes in one way. USB does all of that and 75 other things, and it does them simultaneously. The best way to have really called this would have been to say, you know what, everything you used before today, that was USB old. Now we have USB 4, and get rid of the whole Thunderbolt thing, because that's marketing too. Let's call it what it is. It's all Type-C. It's all based on the same technology. And as we go forward, let's do, like Andrew said, what the Wi-Fi systems are doing. I know what Wi-Fi 6 is, and I know what Wi-Fi 7 is going to be, and I can make a decision as a consumer whether I need to step into that. I have no idea whether I need 40 gigs or 20 gigs or 5 gigs. Or God help us all, they're still calling it USB 2.0. So that didn't confuse anybody, did it?
No.
Vote for Joe.
Well, the silver lining to that, Joe, is that we have an entire industry built around people who have to do that interfacing, and so we still have jobs tomorrow.
That is a silver lining. Yeah, I got to assume that somebody's going to be calling me up going, what is this supposed to do again? And I get paid. So, yay for that. But yeah, there's got to be a better way. I really think that this was the wrong way for the Implementers Forum to go. And I think that their marketing study that they did neglected talking to people who actually have to deal with the folks who are trying to put this stuff in. Talk to some of us at a manufacturing or an integration level and ask us, what questions are we answering for the end users? And you'll have a better idea of how to label this stuff. I'm not crazy about what HDMI did, but I kind of get it. But this move with USB, I think, is just nuts.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they reverse their decision in another 2 or 3 years.
And like Joe said, that won't confuse anybody either.
Well, I mean, if you were really going to be pedantic about it, I mean, you've got USB space 3, then there was USB space 3.2, and then when USB 4 came out, they took the space out between USB and the 4. And it's like, okay, what are we doing here, fellas? It's like, why are we getting into this level of detail about how we're branding what, to Joe's point, is really just a data transport mechanism and how we're getting things ingested into these systems. The things that they get wrapped around the axle about are just pretty astounding.
And that's exactly why you need a Joan Cornwell in Congress that will help form.
Jeez, all right.
Already I'm going for Congress.
Okay, all right.
Charmaine, you are going to be my campaign manager.
I will be your campaign manager, because honestly, that's, to go to the point of, that is the biggest problem we have in our country. We don't have the right agencies that look into these things, as Joe says, and ask the industry, experienced veterans, people, and that do this every day to come to a consensus. And that's our problem, especially in AV. IT is a little ahead of us on that. We're not. And in AV,
IT has rules.
IT has lots of rules. I came from IT. And AV, the reason why I came to AV, because it's exciting, adventurous, right? Like being on Pirates of the Caribbean. I get to be Jack Sparrow. It's great. But after a while, the adventure is too much for everybody, and they need a consensus. So I think that's where this is going with USB.
This is AV. We don't need your stinking rules.
Exactly.
The great thing about standards is you have so many to choose from.
Now that we've had that one out, let's wrap this up. Thank you all so much. Charmaine Torruella from QSC. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. And you can find me if you look me up at LinkedIn. My name's Charmaine Torruella, as it's spelt on the screen, as well as on Twitter. And if you want to reach me at QSC, it's charmaine.torruella@qsc.com. Vote for Joe.
Vote for Joe. All right, Senator Cornwall.
Yes, absolutely. That's where I'm going. So I am with Legrand. I'm the AV technology evangelist for Legrand. You can find me on LinkedIn as Joseph Cornwall. You'll find me on Twitter at Joe Cornwall. If you want to reach out to me, joseph.cornwall@legrand.com. And if you want to know exactly what I'm thinking about in terms of technology and AV, come and check us out on Legrand AV University.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, very nice to have you, sir. Andrew Evans from Extron. How do people connect with you?
Appreciate that, Tim. You can find me on LinkedIn and then aevans@extron.com for the email, and anything on USB, sustainability, or just general technology, extron.com is a great resource.
All right, very good. Thank you all so much. For Tim Albright, do not follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. A brand spanking new AV profession with Taylor Moore landed this week, or is landing this week. So check that out if you would, please. Also, we are heading to a couple different places. Just got back from CEDIA Expo from Dallas. And this time next month, we will be in Vegas for Digital Signage Experience. So check all that out and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.